So this is the app that I'm making right now, and it's a Mac app. It's my first one. I've done about 400 commits, about 2,000 prompts. I'm using 3.7 Claude AI mostly, and there's a ton of features that I baked into this. The main reason why I built this is because I wanted a really good voice to app. So you can just speak to any app you want, such as Slack, such as email, using your voice. And then it turned into a chat app because I wanted to bake more features into that. So right now I'm in the middle of working the design aspect and the coding aspect. So I can generate these designs here from scratch using any model that I want, such as Claude, GPT with web, attachment, and I have this new button here, which allows you to generate code, which is awesome. I baked in custom prompts to help you with designing, and this is the result. So we have the ability to generate this HTML code, and you're going to be able to set this, the adaptiveness and all that stuff. You can export to JPEG and download as a code file, and really, really cool experience. I love, love, love creating a Mac app at this point. As you can see, you can do a lot of things. And, I made this prototype here with just a couple of prompts, and it's fully interactive, as you can see here. So really excited to talk about this experience and what it takes. Now, I'm not lying when I say that I work so much with AI right now, and I have made 400 commits so far on this project, 2 weeks. And also, if you look at my other projects, we have, Motion AI, which is a code name, but it's Dreamcut. And this is 2,900 commits so far. So I'm guessing probably like 10,000 prompts. And then we also have the other one, which is a UI kit that I'm building right now. So, to be able to change the rounded corners, we have like so many of these, components that you can customize in terms of colors and fonts and all of that stuff. So I'm busy and I've been experimenting. I can't wait to share with you. So first of all, what is the difference between a web app and a Mac app or an iOS app? All right, so if you're building cross-platform in the browser and you don't need access to all of these extra features such as the camera or even the menu. So for example, if you have a Mac app, you have access to this menu bar, which also gives you first-class access to the microphone. So for example, I can literally, read the content, take a screenshot, or have access to, the camera and all that stuff really easily, and also from anywhere. So I'm not dependent on the browser of someone opening a browser, opening the website, and keep that open all the time. So I'm not dependent on that. So that's why you would create a Mac app, which is why, ChatGPT, they needed to do that. They want to have more access to Xcode, to a cursor to be able to read the code files and make changes. So that's why you need a Mac app. Now you need, if you're building like a UI kit, if you're building a landing page, such as the Dreamcut landing page that I did, you don't need a Mac app. You don't need SwiftUI for that, obviously. And, you don't want to worry about having to create different code bases and different language and different platforms. It's just one, and it exists in the Safari, and that's it. Yes, you can have wrappers like Electron and kind of wrap that and make it cross-platform, but it comes with a lot of cost. And let's talk about the tools. And this is very similar to building for iOS. We're going to be using Xcode, and we're going to be using Cursor. And if you haven't done this in the past, I highly suggest. I have a course on iOS 18. This is using the same tool, so Cursor and Xcode, to build an iOS app. And so it looks a little bit like this, except for the Mac, it's a little bit different because you're someone who spends most of your time in front of a computer like me, and maybe less in front of an iPhone, right? So it makes a lot of sense to make a Mac app. Now, let's take a look at the files. We have Xcode project built for the Mac, and we also have the previews, just similarly. So you can start the canvas, you can start the preview, and you have access to this. And when you can also build directly to your Mac, so you don't need to build for the iOS simulator or for the phone. It's gonna open directly the app right here. So this is really, really cool. I love that. And there's also the design language. So let's talk a little bit about the design language. Your Mac app definitely is more suited for the Mac design language. What I mean by that? Well, you're not gonna have the crazy styling that you see on every single website. It's very different. It's very branded. There's like, you're not gonna have like a ton of logo and all that stuff. And you usually have a sidebar, you have the content, and then you might have the nav bar. Well, actually, you do have the nav bar, the nav bar typically, and you have these little traffic lights, and you have the nav bar with the titles and some of the options and the action, and then you have the action bar. So these are the design patterns of a Mac app. You would see them throughout a lot of the desktop app type, like Slack, like messages or music app. It's gonna use pretty much that design language. And so, if the best way to recognize if it's a native Mac app built using Xcode or not is a sidebar. You have this translucency. I love this sidebar. You can see it's translucent. And I can also show you the dark mode version. Boom. Love the dark mode version. As you can see, everything is adapted. It comes for free when building for, using SwiftUI. It's extremely easy to make these changes, to use primary colors instead of using black as a color. On the web, for example, if you use Tailwind, you're gonna often have to set like neutral 100, which is for light mode, and then 900 for dark mode. In SwiftUI, you can just set primary, secondary. It's gonna automatically set to light and dark mode. So really, really cool. There's a lot of advantages to using Xcode and building for Apple platforms, such as having every single libraries for you, and you don't need to depend on all of those things. Just to give you an example, I only use pretty much 3 libraries, and they're very, very obvious. The first one is Supabase. So Supabase gives me access to having a login. So, oh, I forgot to show you the login, which is something that I love. Boom. Look at this login. What you're noticing here is that it's using the new mesh gradient, which just came out last year, and I just applied it, and I love it. So I just love this, this mesh gradient so much, and it brings so much personality. So what was I talking about? Now, libraries. So we have Supabase. We have Markdown UI, which allows me to have these code highlighting and Markdown. And then I forgot the last one, but it's I think it's probably the only 2 that I have so far. Let me go to my packages, and here you can see I think it's called GRDB. Okay, so this is because I wanted to try the database solution, And then I ended up going with Core Data anyways, which is really good for offline. What this means is that if you have a Mac app, this is going to work perfectly in offline mode. And just to give you an example, I can go to models and I can set a DeepSeek and I can run my model offline. I can be on the airplane and I can just use the app perfectly. So this is using Core Data. It is only using Supabase to connect online, but otherwise, when you're making new prompts and all that stuff, you can just use an offline model and it's going to work, which is amazing. So you don't rely on being connected to the internet. So that's another plus for Mac development. All right, let's start from the beginning and sort of like look at the requirements. First of all, what do you need? You're going to need a Mac. You don't have a choice. If you want to build for iOS, if you want to build for the Mac, you need a Mac. And then I would highly recommend, if you're a beginner, to go with the latest version of the Macs, which is, I believe, Sequoia, if I'm not mistaken. And so we have Xcode, and you're gonna download that from the App Store, and you're gonna search for Xcode. You're going to install this. I don't know why they have such a low rating, but everyone uses Xcode. It's an awesome tool if you know how to use it, if you're patient with it. The same with Mac development and the same with web development. Every platform, every tool has their quirks, and just have to be positive, right? Like vibe coding, you have to be positive, otherwise you're gonna give up in 5 minutes. Now, Xcode, and then for AI, because obviously Xcode doesn't have a very good AI. It has very bad AI, I would say, at this point. Maybe eventually they're going to improve it, but you're going to need something like Cursor or Xcode. Now, Xcode, I would say it's an amazing tool. It edits directly to your Xcode, but it doesn't have the same maturity as Cursor. Cursor has a lot more maturity, has a lot more features baked in. It has a better understanding of your code base, and it has a bunch of new things such as MCP and all that stuff. Now, you're going to download this. You can use it for free. There's no problem. Xcode is free as well. And also Xcode has a free trial. So getting started is no problem. What is a problem is when you're like me, you're like at 1,000 prompts. Of course, it's going to start costing money. But for anyone who's getting started, you're not going to get there. And you'll mostly end up with something free. So once you have everything installed, such as Xcode and Cursor, you're going to go to Xcode and you're going to create a new project. And here you can, do it for multi-platform. But in this case, what I like to do, especially if you're starting your first project, just be very niche and very specific, because at the same time, it gives your AI a lot more understanding and a lot more specificity to what you're trying to achieve. If you have too many kinds of code, too many kinds of file, I think it gets confused a lot as it reads your code base. So what I would do is just select macOS, select app. This is the most basic template. And then you're gonna, obviously you're gonna want to set up a team. And then we're gonna have like my first Mac app, for example. You don't need to say app at the end because usually it gets added, but yeah, I guess it doesn't make sense to say my first Mac, but let's say my voice, the name of the app, let's say my voice, and the team. This is if you have a development team, which if you want to test on a real device, you're gonna need that. I'm not 100% sure if you actually need that for Mac for now. I think you do have like an option for debugging thing. I do have a team, so I don't have that problem, but you can also set it to none. That's fine. And then the identifier, which is your domain name in reverse. So for example, io.designcode or, like x.com or like com.x. So this is what you're going to put, and interface SwiftUI and language Swift, and that's it. I wouldn't touch testing and storage for now. So we're going to save that to your projects. to your documents, to your downloads folder. I like to have a projects folder in my documents or in my downloads folder. So this is what I have. I save all my projects here. I'm gonna create that, and boom, that's it. You can get started. You can already start testing SwiftUI by itself, which is awesome. I highly recommend that you give it a try and just play with the language, get familiar, because you're gonna need it. A lot of people say, yeah, you don't really need to learn code. I understand that. I understand where you're coming from. But there's only so far that you can go, and you cannot ignore this forever. So what I would recommend is that if you can, and if you find it easy, go for it. So, test things. Say, edit stuff. Play with the inspector. And go with these changes, play with it. Because AI is very good at setting the foundation for you, but it's not going to get everything perfect. It's going to make a lot of mistakes. And especially in terms of UI, it's not going to get exactly to what you want. So sometimes, it's just much easier to just change the text yourself, to just change the style yourself. And it's fun. Don't ignore it. I know that it's tempting to just say AI is going to do everything, but I like to think that it's better 99% than 100%, because then you know that you're really trying harder. You're trying to get something that is more unique, that is solving a lot of problems that other people haven't, and that's what I would recommend. So give it a try. Don't ignore it. But yes, you don't need it. I'm not saying that you need it. You absolutely can build apps. The question is, how good will it be? That is the big question mark, because more and more, a lot of people are going to build like really, really basic apps, and it's just, there's going to be a ton of litter out there. Now, look at this. This is your Xcode project. This is your Mac app. You can build it. You can just click on play, select your Mac. This is your preview. And when you click on preview, this is going to be pause. So you have to always, switch back and forth. You can't run both at the same time. And if you run it, it's going to look like this. And that's it. It has your name. It has this. You're going to have to ask to set up a sidebar and stuff like that. But, you have your app. And that's the most important thing. You just need a starting point. The same way with a web development. Usually, you start a project, you clone it, or you set up the quick start. So you go to the terminal and then you start your project. In this case, it did it for you. And it's so easy because Apple provides all of that stuff, and it has all of that UI stuff. You don't need to choose between, hey, do you want Tailwind? Do you want, React? Do you want Vue? No, you just have one path, and it's just so good. It's freeing for the mind. I love it. So we have this. And now we're ready to go to Cursor. I'm going to close my project. I'm going to go to Cursor, and it looks a little bit like this at first. I'm going to open the project, and I can just go to my project, and it's called My Voice. Open it, and there we go. You can start typing right away. But. One thing that I want to say is that AI needs context at best. Like, best thing you can do to AI is to give as much context as possible. So you would want to open this. So this is the navigator. This is a search. This is the source control. We've learned that in the past, but I just want to reiterate it. Now, we have this, and then you're going to select the content view. The main files that you're going to have open is the file that connects to everything. Why is that? Well, AI needs context. AI needs pathways, segues to different files. And you need your index.html. In the case of a Mac app, it's called the content view. That is the main file. So this is the first thing that you're going to need. And then I know I have everything open. For new users, I can't keep up with what is the default because Command B for enabling the left side, which is the navigator. You have the editor, and then you have the inspector, and also the composer. So this is super important. It's called now the AI pane. It might change in the future, but it all comes down to the same. You have the prompting, and then you have the agent mode, the ask mode, and the manual mode. Now, don't even think about changing anything else than agent mode, because nowadays it's so smart that it knows that if you're asking a question or not, etc. Let's talk about models now. We have 3.7 and we have 3.5. Those are the main models that most designers, most coders are using. And then we also have the thinking mode and so on. What I really recommend as a beginner is go with 3.7. I know a lot of people, they don't like 3.7 because it does too much. It goes too far. It takes forever. What I can tell you is that it's really powerful. And it allowed me to create the most powerful things I've ever built in my entire life. And it does that effortlessly. And I don't need to give so much direction, which is great, because if you're a beginner, you don't want to give too much direction and you just want to kind of test and build and just move on. Now, let's start with something super simple. For example, add a sidebar and, set up a, let's say a basic app for chat. And so, sometimes I like to say keep it simple, especially when you're starting out. So we can start with that. We can see how it goes and all that stuff. In the meantime, one thing I want to say is that AI tends to take a lot of steps. But what is really cool about a cursor, which is really good compared to other apps, is that you can now have these checkpoints and you can always come back, revert, and then commit, and then the cycle goes on. Now, again, if you're a beginner, just wait and see. What I can also say is that don't try to prompt something too complicated. And add a sidebar, set up a basic app for chat. So keep it simple. And the reason why I say keep it simple is because I'm using 3.7 and it tends to, do a lot of things, do a lot of steps. Sometimes, honestly, it does like 25 steps, 50 steps. So those are crazy, which is why I like, another thing that I like to tell my son, who is a very, very beginner, he already did 2 apps so far for Mac, because as kids, they love to copy their parents. They love to get inspired. And he did 2 Mac apps. That's true. This is not a lie. And it's great that I kind of showed him, because it gives me an idea on how I can teach it as well. So what I can say is, keep it simple. Do not ignore what AI tells you. The more that you read, think of it like a book, right? The more book that you read, the better informed that you are, and the more you can come up with crazy ideas and get to the next level. Now, read it. I created a simple chat app with with a sidebar. Let's start by exploring the structure. So, it's kind of like this. You can see this is very simple. This is just a few steps. Now, create a necessary file with a sidebar, content view, main chat area, and then, you don't need to read everything, but, if you're a good reader, you know how to scan. So updated content view. I have some data model. If you understand a little bit about data model, this is where you set up the data. In the case of a chat, it could be like the text, the title, or you don't really have a title, but usually you have the date. And so that's a data model. All right, so at the end, you're gonna want to accept the changes. And this is pretty cool. It tells me the steps, which is why I'm saying, ask your questions. If you're blocked somewhere, AI is there, the agent is there. It does everything for you now compared to before. So for example, for web development, you can even go into the terminal. Yes, also for Mac development, now that I remember, it goes into the terminal, it opens your Xcode files, it reads the file in the terminal, and that's really cool. In this case, it's opening, it telling us the steps. So open an Xcode, build and run, Command R, you should see the sidebar, and okay, so select a conversation, type a message. That's pretty cool. We're gonna go back to Xcode, and then we're gonna just follow it, Command R, and voila, we have the first problem. Now, this is the little quirks about iOS development, is that even though it's using SwiftUI, the maturity of SwiftUI is mainly for iOS. So for Mac, it has a few quirks that you cannot use, and AI is not very well trained on Mac development. Now, don't worry. I've been able to build my Mac apps, so I've been able to easily get through them. But let me show you a really, really cool trick that I use all the time. So whenever I see an error, first of all, it's going to go to this tab. This is super important that you get comfortable with this. So you have your tabs, and then it's going to switch. So you have your navigator, you have your changes in the commits, for example, and then you have your search, but also it's going to switch directly here, and you might be confused, and that's okay. Now, as I mentioned before, you want to bring the error directly to AI so that it can fix it for you. So the trick that I use is that I would select it and then Command select the second one, or Shift click to have multiple selected, and then Command C. And that's it. I love this. So now I'm just going to paste this and then press enter. It should be able to solve the problem. Another trick that I love to tell my son when he's blocked and when the problem becomes harder and maybe it's a new API, you include web at the end, which is amazing. So, you have your prompt, you have your, let's say your error code, your error message, and then you include web at the end. So this is more like a last resort. So you start with this first, you accept it, and then you go back, and then you build. Now again, we're gonna need to go again. Boom, we're gonna do that again, and we're gonna keep doing that until it's resolved. Sometimes though, it's gonna keep repeating these things, which is why it's good to include web. Or sometimes it's good to say, please take a step back. There's a lot of people who are suggesting a bunch of tips on these prompts, but I haven't found that I need to do them very, very often. So this is a very simple one. I believe that I can just say this, but at least you can see that the errors are new, right? And I don't know why for such a simple prompt is giving, like, sometimes you get lucky. I would say that in SwiftUI for iOS, you get a lot less errors. But for Mac, boom, that's it. That's it. So you can see hello and send, right? I don't think it's connecting to AI, but it's always saying the same things. It has a UI, it has a sidebar, it has the sort of normal Mac stuff. It has a lot of problems with the UI. Obviously, it's not very standard, and you have to customize it. But you have something that is basic, and it works. One thing I want to say is that this is how you start. This is how you go from here, and you keep doing that. And when you're happy with it, you go here and you commit it. So, for example, basic chat. The other thing you can do is you can always go back to the previous. So sometimes, and I see my son working with a cursor. He goes, with this chat, he just runs forever and forever and ever. Yes, you can do that, but it's not necessarily a good idea. And also, it's good to be able to go back. So this here, restore checkpoint, super important. At any point, you can go back, and even if there was a file that was deleted, it's gonna come back from the dead, which is amazing. So keep doing this. You can load all the messages, you can restore the checkpoint, and then you can go back to the last one, testing it, and so on and so forth. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is rules. And I haven't been able to figure out if it really helps, but it does help to some extent. So for example, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to rules. One thing that I like to add, which is super simple. This is for me, obviously, and every person is different the way that they work. For me, for example, if I have to make a fix or refactor, I like to have like a commit summary. Because like sometimes it's not very consistent how it's coming up with these comments and text, but I like to have a commit summary, and I like to have the AI tell me the steps for fixing or for testing the fix or for testing this new feature. I love when it gives me these steps, these instructions as to how I'm supposed to see this new feature that I just built or this new fix that it made. And if it's a bug and it needs to fix it. So I love this a lot. And the second thing is you want to add project rules. So rules specific to a project. So you're going to add a new rule, and then you're going to name it. So for example, web-dev, for example, and here you're going to put your rules. Now, where do you find your rules? You can always go and search for cursor rules, and you can find here a created list of rules for each types of project. So for example, here, SwiftUI guidelines, and you can just copy this, for example, and you're going to bring this to your rule and then save it. So this gives you more direction as to what are the best practices for each project. It's hard to quantify how useful it is, but I've been using it and it works. And if specifically for macOS and iOS, Ray Fernando, someone I highly recommend that you follow on Twitter as well. He's worked at Apple. He's a great developer, and he has also this really amazing cursor rule that you can use for your project. And learn about Superbase, which is it's all-in-one solution for your login, for your backend, for your data storage, authentication, and all that stuff. So this is super easy to set up. Really good instructions. They have really good documentations, and you can definitely reference that to Cursor, and you're going to be able to use that. In this case, I'm not going to use a web dev rule, so I'm just going to delete this. But this is what we have so far, and have fun and build your own app and experiment with it. So I look forward to see what you're going to come up with in this case, but this is something that is very different from web development. It's a very different flavor. If you don't like web development, this might be something that you like even more. And if you don't like this, then you might like web development. But all in all, Xcode is amazing and Cursor is amazing, and you have so much that you can do and ask from AI, and you have all of these techniques that you can use for your own project. And yeah, just have fun and don't give up, and don't forget that you are in control. You can do anything you want, and you can always go back if something doesn't work out. Don't just give up and say, oh, I couldn't make this work. Just move on to the next feature. Just move on to the next chat. And once you finish with one feature, go and click on the plus, commit, and then start from there, and then move on to the next feature. So yeah, have fun. I'll see you in the next video.